She arrived at my house with her eyes downcast and her soul in silence, and yet I scorned her at first sight, not for anything she said, but for everything she made me feel, without saying a word. I was a duke shaped by ice, she, the new companion, and unexpectedly impossible to ignore. But what I didn't know was that I was about to lose myself to the woman I once scorned, and now I would never be able to forget her. Welcome to part 1 of The Forbidden Passion of the Duke of Ravenshire. The price of desire is high, and the Duke's honor is under imminent risk. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any detail of this story that promises to sweep your heart away.
The fine rain drummed on the carriage roof, as if the sky were whispering warnings that only the heart dared to listen to. I kept my hands folded on my lap, my fingers intertwined more out of nervousness than necessity. The dirt road wound between ancient trees until finally the iron gate appeared. The iron gate. In the landscape. Black. Imposing. With the Blackmore crest carved in stone silence. In the distance, the stately Ravenshire Hall awaited me. My name is Elena Marlowe. At least, it is the name they gave me. I don't remember my mother, and as far as I know, my father died before I could meet him. I was raised by Miss Hathaway, a former governess with noble manners, storm eyes, and hands calloused from having raised a daughter who was not hers, yet receiving love as if she were. Under her roof, I learned to walk with my shoulders straight, to curtsy with dignity, to speak French, and to silence my pains with lavender tea. In the small suitcase at my feet, between modest dresses and a bottle of ink, I keep my only treasure, an old gold brooch with a jade stone and a rose engraved in silver. It belonged to your mother, Hathaway would say every time she polished it with devotion. Sometimes I imagine her face, always with gentle eyes and a smile that would love me, even if I said nothing. Now I was to be Lady Agatha Ravenscroft's companion, a dignified position for someone like me, of unknown birth, but carefully molded manners. The job advertisement had come through a letter from Lady Agatha herself, recommended by a distant friend of Miss Hathaway, the woman who raised me as the daughter she never had. A new home, at least temporary. A new beginning, perhaps. The carriage slowed as it approached the iron gates of Ravenshire Hall. The Blackmore crest rested atop the stone arch, a raven with open wings above a sword plunged into the ground, unyielding, solitary, as if saying, right from the start, here, the heart bends even before entering. The coachman, a white-bearded gentleman with a gentle gaze, dismounted with surprising agility and opened the door for me with a respectful gesture. "We have arrived, miss. I hope the journey was not too uncomfortable." "No, thank you very much," I replied, adjusting my gloves and my posture before stepping onto the damp gravel of the main entrance. The air was cold, sharp as glass. I raised my hand to the collar of my wool cloak, pulling it tighter against my neck as my eyes surveyed the imposing facade of the mansion. 2 wings extended to the sides like stern arms. The architecture was solid, Gothic, built to resist, not to welcome. A woman approached with quick steps, young, with red hair, tied in a messy bun, a freckled face, and keen eyes. She wore a clean apron over a dark dress with rolled-up sleeves. "Miss Marlowe?" she asked, with a smile that seemed to laugh at its own formality. "Yes, that's me," I replied, relieved to finally hear a warm voice. "I'm Joan Holloway. I've been waiting for you since sunrise. Lady Agatha had your rooms prepared and asked me to lead you personally. She said she couldn't wait to meet you. Your recommendations came laden with praise from what I understand. I'm happy to hear that, and a little nervous, I must admit. This house is imposing." "Oh yes, imposing like a cathedral in reverent silence. But don't be fooled. There is life behind these walls," she said with a mischievous glint in her eyes, "even if the Duke himself insists on appearing otherwise." Before I could answer, a movement high on the facade caught my attention. I followed the reflection involuntarily, raising my gaze to the stone terrace above the main entrance. And there, like a shadow chiseled in living marble, he stood, Lord Adrian Blackmore, the Duke of Ravenshire, standing by the balustrade, wearing an impeccably tailored black coat, his hands clasped behind his back. He watched me with the intensity of someone evaluating a dangerous enigma, disguised as a woman. He didn't move. He didn't smile. He didn't nod. He just looked. A look that was not content to merely pass over me. It pierced me, as if searching for cracks in the surface of who I was. Even before allowing me to speak my name, there was a silence between us, filled with everything that would not be said. Still, something inside me refused to look away. If I were another, I would have lowered my head, but I was raised by a woman who taught me to lift my chin, even when the world seemed to want me to shrink. So, I held his gaze, for a second too long to be polite, and he did not look away. "Don't take it the wrong way," Joan said, lowering her voice like someone sharing a sacred confidence. "But the Duke does not usually like changes, and even less, so new presences. I imagined he was traveling. I didn't expect to find him like this. He rarely travels. He prefers to keep the world away and the house under his control. Some say that since the scandals, he has become even more withdrawn. Not that anyone has heard him speak about it, but everyone here has learned to decipher his grace's silences." I looked away only when he retreated back into the study, as if that silent exchange had ended by his will. I felt a shiver, not from the cold, but from something I couldn't name. "Come," Joan said with a firm smile. "Lady Agatha will be happy to see you." And yes? "I'm curious. The previous companions didn't last more than a few weeks, but something about you tells me it will be different." I clutched my brooch beneath the fabric of my cloak, the cold metal against my chest warmed by the tension. "I also feel it will be different, but I don't know yet if it will be for the better, or for the end of everything." And with that, I crossed the gates of Ravenshire for the first time, without knowing that I had just entered the wolf's house.
She descended from the carriage with restrained steps, and yet there was grace. Not a grace forged for the eyes of men, as certain young ladies of the drawing room usually display. Hers was discreet, and, for that very reason, more unsettling. A kind of lightness that did not ask for attention but captured it. The dress was modest, of greyish wool, without lace or embellishments, but clean, well-fitted. Her cuffs were perfectly aligned with her wrists. The cloak buttoned up to mow. The collar revealed a discipline not expected of someone who arrives to serve. And the eyes. They were not a maid's eyes. They did not seek permission. They observed, not like those who desire, but like those who understand. Elena Marlowe. The name had sounded too simple when Julian mentioned it 2 days ago. She seems refined, discreet, educated. "Perhaps she will be good company for Aunt Agatha," he had said, always too generous in his judgments. "Too competent for someone who carries no name at all," I replied, with the precision expected of a man who can no longer afford to believe in appearances. Now, seeing her before the house, I have carried on my back since I was forced to inherit it. I understood that Julian was wrong. She did not seem refined. She was, and that for me was more dangerous than any lack of manners. From the terrace, my fingers found the cold stone railing, as if that anchored me to reality. The woman was greeted by Joan, the red-headed maid who insists on seeming smarter than is appropriate for her. Miss Marlowe inclined her head in a sign of gratitude with undeniable kindness, but there was firmness in that inclination, a kind of contained, almost involuntary dignity. Then she raised her gaze and saw me, just a second, perhaps 2, but she did not look away, and against all common sense, I did not look away either. I know how to recognize eyes that calculate opportunities. I have seen them too much. Since my house was scratched by scandals and my honor torn apart by false promises, her eyes, however, did not ask me for anything. They just held steady, and that was enough for something I did not understand, to unnerve me inside. I tilted my face a little further into the shadow of the archway, like someone seeking to conceal their own discomfort, and I murmured, "Dangerous." Julian approached, crossing the corridor to the terrace with his hands in his pockets and the light step of someone who has never carried the weight of a title. He cast a brief look at the young woman below and then at me. "Is that her? Our aunt's new companion? Who else would it be?" I retorted humorlessly. "Lady Agatha will be satisfied. It's been years since I've seen such a clear gaze." He smiled sideways. "Perhaps even her nephew is in need of a little of that." I ignored the provocation. Julian had the bad habit of testing the limits of my patience with fraternal sweetness. I spoke only what was necessary. Inform Lady Agatha that her awaited companion has arrived, and tell her to ensure she brings no trouble. Trouble? He arched an eyebrow. Oh, Adrian, she has barely entered. Precisely. Julian did not argue. He just nodded with a resigned air and disappeared down the internal corridor. I returned my gaze to the entrance of the house. The young woman walked beside Joan, led up the steps with a composure that is not learned. In servants' corridors, the way she stepped, the way she looked, the way she kept her spine straight even before the severity of Ravenshire. I hate enigmas, especially those that arrive with a small suitcase, a serene look, and a name without a surname. I moved away from the parapet and entered the study, but not without hearing, or perhaps imagining, the sound of her footsteps crossing the marble of the vestibule, soft, precise, as if they already knew the way. If this story has already captivated you, leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Stay with me until the end, because at Ravenshire Hall, even silence holds secrets that only love can reveal.
The house was cold, but not from a lack of lit fireplaces or blankets over the velvet sofas. It was a more subtle cold, settled in the walls, in the long silences of the corridors, in the gaze of the servants who seemed to move with more caution than routine. Ravenshire Hall was a fortress of old rules, and every room seemed to carry memories that no one dared to name. Lady Agatha, however, was a charming exception. Tea must be taken at 4, always with a slice of lavender cake. The cakes, unfortunately, have never been the same since our old cook retired for passion. She fell in love with a butcher, imagine. But punctuality remains a consolation, she had said on my second day, with that witty twinkle in her fragile eyes. The lady was amusing, demanding in an almost ceremonial way, but surprisingly affectionate. In exchange for her trust, I gave her what I could: constancy, attentive silence, and the diligence that Miss Hathaway had taught me. In a few hours, I reorganized her forgotten embroidery, put the silver bell she preferred over noisy calls back into use, and resumed reading aloud the passages from the novels that had been abandoned to the dust on the side table. On the morning of the 3rd day, while walking with Lady Agatha in the winter garden, we were approached by a young gentleman of relaxed appearance and pleasant features. His dark eyes, softer than his brother's, lit up when he saw me. "You must be the famous Miss Marlowe," he said, tipping his hat with a slight bow. "I've heard praise even from the top of the library, which is a rare feat in so little time." "Julian, don't be irreverent," Lady Agatha rebuked with false severity. "But yes, this is Miss Elena Marlowe, and she has been a ray of sunshine in this aging house." "Then I hope you're not frightened by the climate here," he replied, with a subtle smile, glancing discreetly at the 3rd-floor window, where the Duke's immobile silhouette usually watched without showing himself. "Climates do not frighten me, my lord," I replied with a slight smile. "Only trees that refuse to bloom." Lord Julian let out a low laugh. Lady Agatha merely smiled as one who approves without needing to comment. That evening at the end of dinner, when Lady Agatha showed some gastric discomfort, something she disguised with dignity, I approached her and in a serene voice commented, "Milady, if you permit me, I could ask the kitchen for an infusion of fennel and dried chamomile petals. They are gentle on the stomach and restore sleep." "Oh, my dear, that sounds like a balm. I don't know how I didn't think of it." But before she could complete the sentence, a voice cut through the air of the room. "This house does not lack medicinal advice given by companions, Miss Marlowe." The imposing Duke had entered the room without warning. He was impeccably dressed, as always, but the cold emanated from him more than from the night seeping through the windows. His eyes passed over me with the cold precision of someone who observes too much. Lady Agatha tried to soften the moment. "Nonsense, Your Grace. Elena was only trying to help me. Don't be so quick to censure. It is care, not audacity, that moves her." He merely inclined his head without smiling, but I saw the way his jaw tensed, how his eyes returned to me, for a fraction of a second, more intense than cold. That night, I heard from the maid that the tea I recommended had been served discreetly to Lady Agatha's chambers, under the direct orders of the Duke himself.
She spoke little, but even so she invaded. Not the corridors with bold steps, not the rooms with forced laughter, but with gestures, small, precise, almost imperceptible, and that was what bothered me. I watched her from a distance in the winter garden, the way she leaned in to listen to my aunt, how she replaced a shawl on her shoulders with the care of someone who had truly cared for someone before. Elena Marlowe was, by all accounts, a competent companion, and that was enough to irritate me. The house, which in recent years seemed to sleep under a layer of carefully maintained emotional ice, was beginning to breathe. The maids smiled more. Julian walked the corridors more often. Even Lady Agatha complained less. And all of this since she arrived. That night, her suggestion about infusions seemed like too bold a gesture, even if effective, even if kind, even if correct. In the library, hours later, when the house was resting, I went to fetch a specific volume from my grandfather's collection and found her there, alone, with a copy in her hands. "This room is reserved for the family, Miss Marlowe," I announced with measured coldness, my voice echoing between the stained glass windows and the ancient scent of leather and ink. She raised her eyes with calculated slowness, not with fear, as many would, but with something close to patience, or worse, comprehension. And then she spoke. "Lady Agatha suggested I choose a light volume, something to distract me before rest. I believe this work would serve the purpose." She lightly raised the book between her hands without justifying herself. Her voice was low but firm, not a tremor, no apology. She knew she had permission, but she relinquished it. "Nevertheless," she continued, placing the volume back on the central table with a gesture of precision that bordered on the artistic, "if the zeal for your books is more precious than your aunt's comfort, I shall naturally withdraw." There was no irony, just elegance, distance, and a certain kind of silent dignity that struck me with more force than I would have liked. She spoke with a soft voice, her lips slightly curved, not in a smile, but in something more contained, more dangerous. That beautiful, perfectly shaped mouth moved with a serene precision, and for an instant, distracted, I realized I was listening less to the words and more to the way they came out. Looked at the brooch she wore, pinned close to the collar of her dress with a more attentive gaze. The piece of gold and jade seemed to have more history than the young woman let on. How could a simple maid possess such a jewel with such precision and value? Something about that piece awakened a vague memory, but I dismissed the thought. She was distracting me enough already. She made a brief curtsy, not the submissive genuflection of a servant, but the respectful inclination of someone who knows her own worth. To know more would be dangerous, and she completed without even looking directly at me. "Books, Your Grace, reveal more about their owners than letters, but do not worry, I do not intend to know more than I have been granted." She turned then, and with steps as soft as silk sliding over ancient marble, she moved away from the library. She did not rush her walk. She did not shrink away. She did not hesitate. And this, for some damned reason, held me to the ground like cast iron. I watched her disappear down the corridor as if the gloom accepted her back with reverence, with that modest dress accommodating her slender figure with natural elegance. And only when the silence became absolute did I realize I still hadn't moved a muscle. There was something in her voice, in the way her nape curved gracefully beneath her pinned-up hair, a few rebellious strands escaping like traces of light in a dark frame, something that awakened. An unexpected heat beneath my collar. It was not anger. It was not censure. It was an unexpected, intense impulse, impossible to ignore, unexpected, and for that very reason, powerful. That woman entered the rooms with sweetness and left as a presence that stirred the air around her, subtle but impossible to forget. I closed my eyes, my fist still clenched at my side. The air of the library, once cold and orderly, now seemed too heavy, as if she had left a trace of invisible perfume, something between lavender tea and provocation. I ran my hand over my face and then through my hair, trying to shake off the stupor. I took a deep breath, but it wasn't enough. Something inside me was stirring, not physically, but where I had long judged everything inert. With a quick gesture, I summoned the nearest footman, who waited outside like a disciplined shadow. "Take this book to Miss Marlowe's chambers. Say only that, It was an oversight from the library. The footman hesitated for an instant, surprised, but nodded, and when he left with the volume under his arm, I let myself fall into the armchair in front of the unlit fireplace. She speaks little, and yet she invades everything that is mine.
The days at Ravenshire Hall seemed to be measured by the sound of bells and the tread of discreet steps in the cold stone corridor. Time did not pass conventionally there. It stretched, it lingered, and sometimes it seemed to halt completely. There was something suspended in that place, as if the house breathed in its own way, holding its breath between past and silence. I had learned Lady Agatha's habits easily, not because they were simple, but because she was predictable as the sunset, demanding but affectionate, like an old melody that challenges memory with every note. In a short time, I already knew the exact angle she preferred her armchair by the fireplace, the hint of perfume that made her smile, and the way her hands rested upon the folds of the blanket when she dozed during a reading. With the servants, I maintained my kindness and discreet demeanor. With Lord Julian, I allowed the beginning of a genuine liking. He was gentle, attentive, and possessed a free spirit that contrasted with the burden of the house that his brother seemed to bear alone. On the morning of the 15th day, Lord Julian invited me to walk to the edge of the east garden, where the magnolias still resisted the close of autumn. I went hesitantly, but Lady Agatha, with a knowing smile, merely said, "Go, my dear. He needs good conversation as much as I need jasmine tea." And so we went. Lord Julian spoke lightly, but there was something about him, a care in his gestures, a kindness that was not rehearsed. He spoke of his childhood, of the afternoons he spied on his older brother's lessons with the tutors, and how Adrian always knew where he was stepping, as if from a very young age he knew the world would charge him for every choice. "He carries Ravenshire like one carries a burden. I carry it like one holds a memory," Julian said, looking at the mansion with a sad smile. "Perhaps that is why your grace seems lighter." Lord Julian laughed. "You don't need to address me by that title. My brother is the Duke, not me, and if he ever decides to truly smile, I swear the world will have a small collapse." I laughed too, at my little lapse, and it was at that moment that I felt it, a shiver on my skin, as if I were being watched. I turned, discreetly, on the third-floor balcony next to the study. He was there, His Grace, the Duke of Ravenshire, immobile, inexpressive, but his eyes fixed on me. For an instant, I couldn't breathe properly, not out of fear, but out of an unsettling and unfamiliar feeling that I dared not name.
The sight of her in the garden, laughing, her head slightly tilted back, her hands crossed in front of her body, her hair loose at the nape of her neck, tied only with a pale ribbon. Julian was saying something, and she listened with genuine attention. I watched that scene as one watches a memory they did not live, and it bothered me. At first I thought it was because of protocol. She was there to serve, not to stroll among the flowers with my brother as if she belonged. But the truth, cruel like all truths we prefer not to admit, was otherwise. It wasn't her presence that disturbed me. It was the way she perfectly belonged, as if that garden and that place were part of who she was, and that was unforgivable. Ravenshire Hall had always been a haven surrounded by unavoidable commitments. Each morning, documents from the county, political correspondence, petitions from the tenants, reports from the land administrator, letters from the ministry, and occasionally unwanted visits from noblemen of Parliament, trying to gauge if I would return to public life after the damned scandal, were piled up. The memory still poisoned me. The looks at the assemblies, the anonymous letter received during a formal hearing, the name Cecily Alderton murmured in the corridors like a scorn. The woman I almost led to the altar delivered more than promises to another man, and I delivered trust to one who knew how to destroy it with precision. It was there that the Blackmore name lost its ancestral weight, and I, along with it, lost the desire to trust. I returned to the study late in the afternoon, and the sky, until then melancholic, darkened violently. When the storm broke over the vale, bringing thunder and winds that howled through the mansion's cracks, I didn't bother to answer the servants' calls. I left the letters on the table, poured myself some aged cognac, and allowed the silence to become stronger than any other noise that night. The house slept, I did not, and it was among the shadows of the second-floor corridor that I saw her.
The storm had awakened Lady Agatha with a start. I went to her room with a candle and prepared her to return to sleep. The sound of thunder seemed to revive painful memories in her. She murmured names. One of them was Eleanor. I closed the curtains, replaced the shawl over her shoulders, and remained there until her eyes closed again. I left carefully. The corridor was dark, and only the noise of the rain filled the spaces between my steps. It was then that I saw him, leaning against the stone wall next to the large tapestry. Him, without his usual coat, his shirt collar slightly loosened, and a glass in his hand that indicated a night too long. Not intoxication, but exhaustion. His eyes, slightly clouded, met mine with an intensity that made me stop. "Miss Marlowe," he said, his voice more hoarse than usual. "Your Grace." There was a silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was dense. He walked 2 steps toward me, his gaze still on me as if searching for something, or losing himself. "Am I to be grateful for your presence, or should I ask how much longer you intend to bewitch this house?" The tone was dry, but there was something there, a tremor in the words, as if they were not spoken to push me away, but to restrain something he didn't want to let slip. I took a deep breath. I looked into his eyes. "I did not come to bewitch, Your Grace. I came to serve." I waited, then I completed, even while being treated as a threat. He stared at me as if he didn't know how to respond. For an instant, he seemed on the verge of taking one more step. His gaze swept over my face for a moment too long to go unnoticed, and my lips, traitors, parted without me realizing it. For a second, it seemed he considered reaching out a hand, a contained gesture, more symbolic than real. But it stopped in the air, suspended, hesitant. His gaze dropped to my neck, where it lingered for long seconds. Then he looked back into my eyes, but the touch did not come. And yet, I felt something tremble inside, as if that moment had stirred more than it should. A warm, unexpected sensation took my chest, soft and deep, as if something dormant in me had been called to consciousness without warning. I hadn't known I wished to be so close to him, not until that moment. But there, in the faint light of the corridor, with the storm beating against the stained glass, I realized that I did. The smell of cognac on his breath was strong, but there was something more, something that came from his warmed skin, from the fabric of his slightly loosened collar, revealing just a detail that hinted at his warm presence. His eyes, those deep eyes, cold as steel in the dead of winter, now probed me with a contained, vulnerable intensity, as if searching for something in me that I didn't even know I carried. And yet, I remained, immobile, shaken, as if all the air in the corridor had become too thick to breathe naturally. His gesture died before it was born, but something in me had already been awakened, and it would not easily go back to sleep. I curtsied softly, trying to preserve some dignity in the midst of the silent chaos that invaded me. "Good night, Your Grace." I turned. The steps I took towards the stairs were controlled, measured, but every muscle felt like trembling glass. Behind me, the air still carried his scent, and inside me, my heart betrayed all, the serenity I tried to preserve, because for the first time since I set foot in this house, I desired something that was not asked of me, and that something had a name and eyes like a storm.
She was gone, and the corridor became darker, emptier. The storm outside was only a pale shadow of what roared within me. That woman, with her calm eyes that do not retreat, her sweet voice that doesn't demand space, but occupies it, the delicate expression, serene, undisturbed, lips capable of outlining the purest of smiles, a curve of silence that disarms me more than screams. I almost curse it. I almost touched her, and that wasn't the worst of it. It was wanting to discover how far her proximity would undo my boundary, wanting to perceive in the rhythm of the air between us the instant her calm would surrender to what we dare not name, wanting for her presence to remain, filling the space that became too vast when she left. She is a risk, but not the kind one recognizes and avoids. She is the type you realize too late, when you are already trapped, when you are already burning. She does not impose herself, but she settles in. She does not offer herself, but she burns. There is a beauty in the way she doesn't try to please, a dangerous elegance in the way she does not humble herself. I returned to my room and sat on the edge of the bed, the glass still in my hand, but now untouched. The smell of cognac was strong, but not as strong as the trace of lavender and warmth that still seemed to float in the corridor or inside me. She was just a companion, a woman without lineage, without a name, without a right, but there in the dark, with my chest at war and my heart beating too fast for my own peace, she was everything my attention insisted on finding. The night passed and brought me no peace, nor forgetfulness, only the bitter reality of that which, for honor, it was not mine to seek.
The days following the storm felt clearer, as if the sky, too, breathed a sigh of relief after so much tension. Lady Agatha returned to strolling in the garden in the morning, covered by a blue wool shawl that matched the vivid tone of her still surprisingly keen eyes. She used to say that the valley air was good for her joints, but I believe what truly moved her was the desire to escape the monotony that the house, with its echoes and long silences, imposed on her. On that particular morning, something different was in the air. It was as if everything had been slightly rearranged, as if the world had subtly tilted to a new axis. As Joan and I were collecting dry leaves from the south garden, I heard soft, regular footsteps behind me. I turned and saw him, Thomas Whitlow, the young man who looked after the herb greenhouse and Lady Agatha's small personal library. He had brown hair, always modestly combed, hands calloused from work, and a serene gaze that inspired confidence. His manners were surprisingly refined for someone of his position, and whenever he spoke to me there was a deliberate lightness, like someone trying to touch something without causing a stir. "Good morning, Miss Marlowe," he said, bowing his head with a sincere smile. "Good morning, Mr. Whitlow." Joan, always attentive, discreetly withdrew to fetch more baskets. He approached with his hands behind his back, holding something. "I brought a small gift. I thought you might enjoy reading on nights when sleep hesitates to come." He handed me a small, hand-bound volume, Poetry by Robert Burns. The gesture surprised me. "It's a beautiful copy, and a very kind gesture," I replied, accepting it delicately. "I like Burns. I thought you might. Your preferences speak even when you don't reveal them, miss." The compliment was said with respect, but something in it made me blush, not out of vanity, but discomfort. He saw me. That was undeniable, and in a way, being seen kindly was comforting. But there was also a silent discomposure, a feeling that something within me hesitated to be reached. "If you have a moment free," he continued with a certain shyness, "I would like to show you the new stretch of garden I have been tending at the back of the estate. There are wild lilies blooming, and if I may say so, they resemble your way of being in the world. Silent, yet impossible to ignore." I smiled sweetly. I bowed my head, slightly. "Thank you. I am honored by the comparison. Lady Agatha will certainly be happy to see your work flourishing." And with that, I bid him a gentle farewell, maintaining the dignity and reserve I had been taught. The book pressed against my chest, my heart more restless than flattered.
I watched from afar, and I detested every second. From the terrace above the West Hall, I watched Whitlow walk up to her as if he had been invited. A mere gardener, albeit one with elegant speech and a taste for books, daring to court her with that air of studied kindness. And she smiled, not the smile she distributes out of politeness, but that other one, rarer, more reserved. The kind of smile one gives to someone who, in some way, has already become part of the routine. His hand extended something to her, a book. She accepted it, and in that instant, I wished to snatch that book from her hands and hurl it away, or that the volume would catch fire or simply vanish between her fingers. Jealousy. The word cut through me like a blade, sheathed in pride. I retreated into the office and closed the window more forcefully than I should have. The glass rattled. What did she see in him? Security? Stability? Simplicity? Whitlow was a secure man, because he had never had much to lose. I, on the other hand, knew what it meant to carry a name, a dukedom, a tarnished past, and she was a breath of something too pure to be taken by hands already soiled with distrust. But the image of her, smiling with that damned book in her arms, did not leave me. Later, when night descended and the corridors returned to their usual tone of whispers and light footsteps, I found her alone in the east wing corridor. She was returning from Lady Agatha's chambers. Her brown hair was simply pinned up, and yet there was something about her that seemed to envelop the space with presence. I stopped before her, her eyes locked with mine. A moment of silence ensued. "Mr. Whitlow seems charmed," I began, with veiled coldness, but my eyes fixed on her. "With your sweetness." She stopped, turned slowly, her gaze direct, without defiance, but without submission. She arched an eyebrow slightly. "I imagine it is comforting," I added, "to be so admired." There was a sweet poison in my voice that I could not contain, as if I wanted to punish something that was not hers, but mine. She took a second. She took a deep breath, and her eyes, those silent, deep eyes like a lake in winter, held mine for longer than was acceptable. "It is comforting to be seen kindly, Your Grace." The way she spoke my title was like a veiled caress, not ironic, just real. She did not look away. Neither did I. For an instant too long, I took a step forward, almost without realizing it. There was a shadow of hesitation between us, a distance too small for what we felt, and too large for what we still dared not face. My hand rose, just a few inches, perhaps to brush away a loose strand of hair that grazed her temple, but I stopped. She noticed. Her eyelashes trembled slightly. The air between us heated up strangely and uncomfortably, as if the world were holding its breath, waiting for the touch that never came. "Mr. Whitlow brought you a book?" I asked quieter, almost hoarsely. "Yes." The answer came with sweetness, but there was an indefinable note there, as if she wanted to know what I would do with that information. "And will you read it?" She tilted her head slightly. "Perhaps." A brief pause, like someone holding their own breath, a half smile that never fully reveals itself. "But today, I am exhausted." In her voice there was an ambiguous shimmer, a nod and a farewell intertwined, like doors opening and closing in the same gesture. It was the exhaustion of someone who carries the weight of being seen, interpreted, and illuminated by gazes she did not ask for. She inclined her head with the elegance of an ancient gesture. "Good night, Your Grace." And she departed, without urgency, without stumbling, without granting the past the privilege of a final glance. I remained where I was, with my hand still suspended in the air, like a traveler who tried to catch a ray of light. My breathing faltered, and my pride, that fell to the floor with the discretion of a precious object breaking without a sound. Because she was not seeking the reflection I offered, she seemed not to reciprocate my yearning to the same degree, and realizing that I wanted to be the mirror that touched her without touching her, that yes revealed a fear greater than any rumor I had ever tried to hide.
That night, the wind blowing through the second-story windows seemed to carry something denser than a breeze, almost as if the house itself were watching and holding its breath. He confronted me, with words carefully adorned with coldness, but eyes that betrayed an impossible-to-hide turmoil. And I trembled, not outwardly. My posture was irreproachable, chin up, hands clasped in front of my body, voice firm. But inside I was only chaos. I did not fear him, but I felt him. I felt every nuance of that instant, the proximity, the deep sound of his voice, the gesture that almost happened and remained suspended in the air. Almost. And in the almost, I lost the balance I had so carefully cultivated. My heart pounded with contained fury. A sweet torment took hold of me, a kind of sensation I was not used to facing, and my thoughts became an improper, uncomfortable, restless confusion. God help me, because everything in me prayed that he had not noticed, that he had not seen the unexpected blush that rose from my collarbones to my ears, that he had not heard the hesitant pause in my breath when his eyes scrutinized me for an instant too intense, that he had not perceived the minimal and involuntary inclination my body made, as if his contained gesture pulled me even without touch. I kept walking, maintaining my rhythm, grace, and composure. But inside, everything shook. Thomas was kind, polite, safe, but he was not the one who made time stop inside me. He was not the one who transformed the air around me. He was not the one who left my soul divided between flight and surrender. And that That was the real risk, because in that instant, I knew with complete clarity that my heart had already taken a step that my reason hesitated to accept.
That afternoon, her laughter reached me first. Loud, no, but light, delicate, clear, like a living note breaking the constant somber tone of the routine at Ravenshire Hall, the kind of sound that didn't fit in that place, and precisely because of that, seemed to illuminate it from within. I stopped in the shadow of the tea room entrance. The sun streamed through the windows with golden rays, casting light on Elena's face as she leaned slightly to hear Lady Agatha. My aunt touched her, pulse with visible affection, her fragile fingers resting on the young hand, as if she feared it might disappear. Julian stood by the table, holding a small plate with a slice of tart, and speaking enthusiastically. "I admit, Miss Marlowe, I was disconcerted to discover that you appreciate Byron's poems so much. Most young ladies prefer to sigh over Shelley or over tarts." Elena laughed, that sound again, and retorted elegantly, "Ah, but Byron is dangerously sincere. And as for the tarty, well, I confess this one is worthy of the poetry." "See, Aunt," Julian said, turning to Agatha with exaggerated indignation. "She knows how to compliment and provoke in the same sentence. It is a rare talent, dangerous even." "She reminds me of someone," Lady Agatha said, smiling with tenderness and melancholy in her eyes. "Your mother. When she was happy, it was like having spring inside the house. Eleanor brought that warmth back, you know. I thought I was no longer capable of feeling that lightness until she arrived. The mention of my mother struck me with a kind of painful sweetness. I did not hear the rest of their reply. I entered. With my usual composure, I approached and sat at the head of the table, picking up a newspaper I did not intend to read. From a distance, I feigned attention to the pages, while the three continued their conversation, after greeting me aristocratically when I entered. "Perhaps your grace should join us more often on these afternoons," Julian provoked, giving me a sidelong glance over his teacup. "Who knows, Miss Marlowe might be able to charm you as much as she charms the others." "Oh, Lord Julian," Eleanor said, smiling with composure, "do not attribute powers to me that I do not possess." "Hardly. You have already convinced my aunt, the servants, the cook, the cats, and now you are slowly working on me. God help me." Lady Agatha, who was now lightly touching Elena's pulse, her wrinkled fingers on the young woman's skin, like one guarding a rare treasure, 2 generations united by tenderness. "This girl has given me my life back, Adrian," I heard my aunt say with an affection that pierced me with something close to envy. "I never thought I would grow to like someone so much again, after your mother." "My sister Imogen would adore you," Julian commented with a mischievous smile. "Annoying and charming in equal measure, but she has a keen eye for good people. She will arrive soon, I believe, and you will be a balm for her." Lady Agatha nodded. "The poor thing has spent too much time among venomous tongues. Perhaps here she will find a little light again." The laughter followed, light and natural. Even Lady Agatha managed a more jovial laugh than I had heard in months, and I could not pretend as well. An involuntary smile threatened the corner of my lips. I raised my eyes for just a second and met hers. Eleanor was looking at me, but the instant she realized I saw her, her eyes wavered. There was a slight tremor in her posture, as if she had been caught in a thought that should not exist. She looked away. She regained her composure with a sip of tea, and I wondered why. Why did her serenity tremble? Why did my eyes still burn with the memory of her hand being touched with such tenderness by Agatha? I wanted that laughter directed at me. I wanted the light touch of her hand on my arm. I wanted to be the reason for her hesitation. And this desire gnawed at me with an intensity that no name, no title, and no armor of coldness seemed able to contain.
The aroma of dried leaves enveloped the air with an earthy, comforting sweetness. The greenhouse, warmed by the sun filtered through old window panes, had become a silent refuge since Lady Agatha asked me to pick fresh lavender for her pillow. I slid between the rows of plants, my fingers lightly brushing the branches, as if asking permission before harvesting. The heat was gentle, and yet there was a delicate humidity that left the environment wrapped in a natural glow. Thomas was already there, as always. with his sleeves rolled up, his hair slightly disheveled, and that discreet smile that always seemed ready to offer more than it said. "Good afternoon, Miss Marlowe," he greeted, with a slight nod of his head. "Good afternoon, Mr. Whitlow." He leaned over a mint bed and cut a sprig with the precision of someone who knows the soul of plants. "The world would be fairer if everyone had someone like you by their side," he said, raising his eyes to me. I smiled delicately, but felt a slight tension beneath my skin. "And what makes you think I would be justice, Mr. Whitlow? Because wherever you pass, people bow without noticing. Even time seems to yield." The sentence floated in the warm air like the fragrant steam of the herbs. Beautiful. Too beautiful. I turned my gaze back to the baskets, pretending to look for something. But he approached. He held a small sprig of verbena between his fingers, lightly, like one offering. Something precious, yet too fragile. "I would like you to see the new flower bed, back there. I planted the lilies weeks ago, but they only started blooming today. I thought, maybe you would want to see them first." I nodded gently. We walked side by side, in silence. The greenhouse murmured with leaves. My steps were firm, but my heart a little uncertain. We reached a hidden corner, where the light entered through the foliage, painting shadows on the floorboards. He turned to me, his gaze more intense, the silence more charged. I sensed it before I saw it, the hesitation, the pause, the gesture that anticipates itself. He leaned in, slow, careful, as if asking permission of the space between us. "Thomas," I murmured, gently turning my face away. There was a second of silence. He immediately backed away, without hurt, without indignation, just a gentle resignation. "Forgive me, I was foolish. No, you were only honest." I took a deep breath, trying to compose my heart, which insisted on not slowing down. "But I cannot." He nodded with a half smile, but his eyes were still waiting. I inclined my head in a gesture of gratitude and respect, and turned away with restrained steps, crossing the fragrant corridor again to the exit. The heat of the greenhouse accompanied me to the cold stone corridor, but what made me bring my hand to my chest discreetly was not the heat. It was the disconcertion, because, despite the tenderness of the gesture, something in me rejected the idea of being the object of affection, coming from someone who was not him, the Duke.
I walked through the gardens without an exact direction. The cool evening breeze seemed the only thing capable of chilling the turmoil within me, and even that proved useless. Some days she took my thoughts without permission, and now she seemed to take up residence in them. I followed the path of the pruned rose bushes, avoiding the gaze of the servants, trying to convince myself that it was just a walk like any other. It was then that I heard her voice, sweet, soft, hanging on, the leaves like dewdrops. It came from the direction of the greenhouse, that stuffy, humid space where I rarely went, but where she lately seemed to find solace. I approached with slow, careful steps. The gravel beneath my boots crunched like bones, breaking the silence. I stopped, partially hidden among the low branches of a plum tree, and there, in the light filtered by the leaves, I saw them. Her, gently touching a lavender sprig as if it were an extension of her own pulse. Her, hair slightly loose, her face flushed from the heat, and him, Whitlow again, too close, too familiar. I observed the way he looked at her, as if she were poetry hidden in an old book, and worse, I saw the gesture, the leaning of his body, the approach, the almost kiss, the ill-concealed desire of a man who believed he had the right to try. My entire body stiffened, but I stayed, and I watched. She stopped him, turned her face, gently, elegant. She did not allow the touch. Good, very good, but she also did not cut him off with the coldness I wished for, and that was worse than if she had let him kiss her. When she left the greenhouse, her gaze low, visibly disconcerted, I felt something drag me into that space with the force of an ancient instinct. I entered. Thomas Whitlow was still there with his back to me, gathering pruning tools with a tranquility that, at that moment, seemed almost insolent. "Mr. Whitlow," he turned immediately, surprised, but composed. "Lisa, your grace." Tension hung between us like the warm aroma of freshly cut leaves. I approached slowly, like a predator measuring the terrain before the attack. "You work in this house, Whitlow, And diligently, I must admit. He nodded, cautious. I try to serve Lady Agatha well, and the estate. But there are lines. That must not be crossed. I stopped a few steps from him. My tone was still controlled, but imbued with a subtle ice, especially with a young woman who is, in this house under my protection. Never dream of possessing what was never yours. He frowned slightly, still polite, but now alert. I apologize, Your Grace, if my conduct seemed improper to you. Miss Marlowe and I were merely conversing. I saw. Silence. And it is not a matter of seeming, but of being. His face hardened slightly. A wounded pride emerged beneath the mask of composure. With due respect, Your Grace, I did not think there was anything, or anyone, to possess. The blow was direct, cold, rational, and yet my response came before reason asked for restraint. And there is not. The voice came out hoarse, low, almost a whisper, but it carried within it the force of an avalanche about to crash, and he understood. Whitlow's gaze changed, not to fear, but to understanding. He was not stupid. He saw, in my voice, in my rigidity, in the way I pronounced, there is not. He saw the struggle of a man trying to hold on to what he already felt he was losing. He lowered his eyes. He took a deep breath. I understand, Your Grace. He gave a slight bow. Forgive my haste. I guarantee it will not happen again. I nodded with a slight movement of my chin. Cold, formal, victorious, but internally devastated. He left the greenhouse with firm steps. The air seemed heavier after his absence, but there, between the smell of verbena and the suffocating heat, only one truth pulsed within me. She was not mine, but if she were, another's, I could not bear it.
The house slept. There was a kind of silence that only settles when even thoughts seem covered by veils. Sitting in the armchair next to the unlit fireplace, my bare feet hidden beneath the weight of the blanket, I held the brooch. Small, golden, with the design of a rose in relief, my only inheritance. The only piece that linked me to a past I never knew, and to a woman I called mother, but had never seen in portraits. Miss Hathaway always said that a true lady did not need titles, but, nobility of spirit. She taught me to sit like a lady, to write like a poet, and to guard my heart like a jewel. But nothing in those teachings prepared me for Adrian Blackmore. I closed my eyes, pressing the brooch against my chest, and unintentionally, Thomas's image passed through my mind. Kind, attentive, safe. But then, Adrian's face violently overlaid it. The watchful eyes, which seemed to see everything I tried to hide. The broad shoulders, the presence, overwhelming. Thomas calmed me. Adrian destabilized me. And what was worse, my body reacted. The mere memory of the warmth between us in the library, the almost touch in the corridor, the rare smile I saw appear on his face a few hours earlier, all this made me experience a new and profound sensation that I did not know how to name, and shamefully real. I rose with sudden restlessness. The night was cold, but my soul was troubled. I crossed the corridor in silence and found refuge in the music room. There was an old piano there, with slightly worn ivory keys, and I liked to play it on sleepless nights, when no one could hear my hesitations. I sat down. I played a note, then another, a low, melodious cadence that beautifully expressed the storm inside me. Muffled sound, almost a confession, and then I heard the sound of footsteps behind me.
I sensed her before I saw her, a delicate, restless presence like the breeze before a storm. I saw the music room door ajar and, by instinct, entered. She was sitting at the piano, in a white nightgown covered by a shawl, her loose hair falling in silky waves down her back. The faint candlelight outlined her beauty with an almost painful softness. I took 2 steps. The wood creaked. She turned, startled. "Forgive me, Miss Marlowe. I did not mean to frighten you." She stood up, visibly uncomfortable. She gave a slight curtsy. "I did not expect company, Your Grace." "Nor did I." There was silence. "But I could not sleep." She nodded. Her gaze avoided mine. "You also seem restless." She hesitated, then smiled with restraint. "The piano is a silent solace." I took another step, and then I dropped the sentence like a silk-wrapped blade. "I saw you in the greenhouse." She paled. just for a second, but I saw it, and I also saw the way she straightened her shoulders, as if raising a wall of composure between us. I did not know I needed permission to be there. You do not. I stopped before her, but I made Whitlow understand that certain liberties are not acceptable. The surprise on her face was contained, but real. And why does that matter to you, Your Grace? Her voice was soft, but there was something, an elegant provocation, almost a challenge, because you are under my roof and consequently under my protection. She lowered her eyes, but not in submission, in calculation, in containment, and when she raised them again, something shone in them enough to hold all my attention. Under your protection, but not under your will. Those words, my God, those words broke something within me. I approached, slow and deliberate, like someone who fears crossing an invisible boundary and challenges it anyway. She took a step back, but stopped, her back against the side wall next to the piano. You should fear this kind of proximity, Your Grace. And do you fear it? She did not answer. I moved closer, an inch at a time. I stopped so near I could feel her warmth, the faint scent of lavender and old paper. She sighed. Her eyelashes trembled. My gaze rested on her lips for an instant that lasted longer than it should have. So beautiful, so mine, without ever being so. I leaned in. I leaned in just enough to feel the light scent coming from her. There was an instant when our breaths nearly met. Almost. Say my name. My voice was too low, a request almost touching the air between us, a request born from the chasm between yearning and need. She hesitated. I shouldn't. Shh. Just say my name. And then, with a trembling, sweet and warm voice, she whispered, Adrian. I paused. I closed my eyes. Every part of me cried out for a response I should not seek. Everything in me asked for more closeness. My conscience whispered no, but the hell within me said yes. She did not retreat. She did not refuse me. I looked into her eyes, and I could see myself in them. She parted her lips slightly. Her breathing faltered, betraying the tension of the moment. For an instant I imagined everything I should not. The irrational impulse to pull her too close, to seek in her a solace that honor does not allow. But I pulled away, with my heart in ruins and the impulse fighting against the sense of honor that still kept me standing. Hell, I turned and left. Each step a torture, each second a cruel punishment for being a man who loves but cannot have.
The morning arrived without light. The sky remained overcast, and the house seemed to hold its breath. The curtains were drawn even before the sun tried to break through the clouds. The stillness was thick, as if even the wind outside refused to pass. Lady Agatha was gone. Her body, still warm a few hours earlier, now lay wrapped in the embroidered sheets she herself had chosen, the lavender-colored ones, because death should recall the beauty of a flowering field, not the weight of the earth. That is what she had once said. I stayed by her side until the end. The night before her end was surprisingly clear. Lady Agatha, already pale as the linen on which she rested, asked us to come closer. Julian, Adrian, sit with me. I want you to hear my voice one last time, while it still belongs to me. Both obeyed in silence. Julian sat beside her, taking her hand naturally. His Grace remained standing for a while, but finally bowed, leaning on the side of the bed. His eyes were downcast, but his attention, absolute. She turned her face toward her youngest nephew. Julian, my light boy, my son on gray days. She smiled, with a trembling tenderness. There will come a day when the world asks more of you than just joy. Do not run when that happens. There is strength in you, yet unclaimed. He squeezed her hand, not fully understanding, but feeling the weight of those words. She then slowly turned her face to Adrian. Her expression became sweeter, almost maternal. And you, my dear Adrian. He raised his eyes, slowly, as if that had hit him in the most exposed place. You hide in fortresses for fear of ruin. But what if ruin is the soil where life wants to be born? He did not answer, but he took a deep breath, with difficulty, like someone who had just been disarmed. She extended her trembling hand and lightly touched his face. There is love waiting for you, if you have the courage to desire it. We remained silent. Time seemed to stop there. Finally, her eyes sought mine, and her smile curved into something almost complicit. Lady Agatha inhaled slowly, Her chest rose and fell as if breathing petals, not air. When she spoke again, her voice was faint, but clear. Julian, Adrian, both leaned in, attentive. She rested her gaze on both, as one contemplates a much-loved painting and knows they will soon have to say goodbye. Do not let this house sink back into silence. A brief pause, and then, when I am gone, keep Elena here. She is not a transient in this home. She is root. Adrian raised his eyes, as if that statement had broken something inside him. Lady Agatha continued, serene. Imogen, your sister, is due to return, more fragile than she will let on. Elena will surely be a beacon for her, as she was for me. Promise me that you will not treat her as an intruder. This house has not finished writing its story. Julian nodded in silence, his face already bathed in contained tears. Adrian only inclined his head slightly, but the movement was a pact. Then she looked at me, and her face broke into a soft, almost childlike smile. With a last breath of strength, she extended her hand toward me. I approached. I knelt beside her bed, feeling the unrestrained tremor in my hands. She touched my face with her fingertips, and in a low voice, as if confiding to time, "You are not who you think you are, my dear. There is more to you than the world has allowed to be known." The sentence fell on me like a cold breeze that, instead of hurting, revealed. I parted my lips. What did she mean? But the words did not come. Lady Agatha closed her eyes and never opened them again. Julian cried like a boy, and Adrian, with only one tear snaking down his cheek, left. The next day was made of veils. The servants moved like shadows. Meals were left almost untouched, and the house seemed to weep in. Every hinge, every floorboard, every dull beat of the hours. I was the one who chose the dress for the burial. Lady Agatha's favorite piece, pearl gray, with a cameo necklace that said, "Elegance does not have to die with the body." I combed her hair. I arranged her hands. I kissed her forehead. It was like burying a mother. Julian tried to remain upright, but it was Adrian who carried the coffin to the carriage, without a tear, without a word. And when we returned, I found the library, door locked. No one saw him for the rest of the day.
The ground was wet. The fine rain made the earth give way beneath my shoes, and the weight of the coffin on my shoulders felt lighter than what I carried in my chest. I had never been a man of many words, and that morning there were no words left that did not seem an insult. Lady Agatha was more than an eccentric and generous aunt. She was the last vestige of humanity that existed in me, the last woman who knew me before scandal corroded my soul, before the Blackmore name lost its luster, before I built this castle inside made of ice and solitude, and now she was gone. The ceremony was brief, but beautiful. Her favorite flowers, the priest's sober words, the silent touch of Elena's hands on the coffin at the final moment. I watched her. She cried. She truly cried, without shame, without restraint, and that pierced me like hot iron. She had never cried before, not for me, not in front of me, and seeing her collapse, I collapsed inside. I returned home. Without saying goodbye to anyone, I locked myself in the library for hours. Only the smell of books, old wood, and dry ink offered me some solace. I touched her desk. There were Eleanor's notes, marks of dried petals, suggestions for reorganizing the volumes, small details that now seemed like golden relics. In the late afternoon, I called the village restorer. I gave him clear orders that Lady Agatha's library be preserved, catalogued, with Eleanor's notes intact. I did not say why. I did not need to. At night she came.
The library was bathed in the trembling light of candelabra. Adrian was alone, sitting in Lady Agatha's reading chair, his hands on his knees, his gaze vacant, an untouched glass of wine on the side table. I hesitated at the door, but he did not speak, and so I entered. "Your Grace." He raised his eyes, but did not respond immediately. "I apologize if I interrupt you. I just wanted to see the library one last time." He made a gesture with his hand. "You have permission to use, the library as much as you wish." Pause. "It will be restored, and maintained as Lady Agatha liked, and with your notes, Miss Elena." My eyes stung. "Thank you." He stood up. "Do not thank me. It was she who saw value in you. I merely realized too late." There was silence, but it was not discomfort. It was something denser, more intimate. He approached slowly. His cold eyes, always so restrained, now seemed almost human, almost broken. Everything in this house dies, my sweet Elena. Even I. My hands trembled, hearing my name slide from his voice. But you, he continued, his voice deep. You are made of something else. I hesitated, but I responded, my soul exposed. Perhaps because I never allowed myself to be extinguished. Even when they tried. We looked at each other for a long instant. Nothing more was said, but there, in that silent exchange, something was sealed, not with words, but an invisible pact, a fall that was beginning, and that neither of us would be able to stop. The snow started without warning. First, there was the silence. That kind of silence that seems to swallow the usual sounds. The servants' footsteps, the banging of the windows, the creaking of the wood. Then came the flakes, slow, dense, hypnotic, as if the sky decided to lull the world to sleep in white. I should not have been outside. But there was something that called to me. The flowers. The small violets I had planted for Lady Agatha weeks before her departure. They were discreet, but alive. One of the last gestures I shared with her. The frost threatened to destroy them, and foolish or not, I could not ignore it. I went down through the back of the property without anyone seeing me. My boots sank into the soft snow, and my breath misted before my eyes. I knelt before the small flower bed and covered the buds with dry leaves, cloths, and my own thin cloak. The cold pierced me, but there, kneeling on the earth, my fingers stiff, my heart throbbing with longing, I felt alive in a strange way. That was when I heard him. Firm footsteps, the muffled sound of boots treading on the snow, but with enough determination to break any inertia. I raised my face. He was there. Adrian, his face shadowed by the high collar of his overcoat, his hair sprinkled with snow, his eyes intense. He said nothing. He just approached. He removed the heavy cloak from his shoulders, and without asking permission, wrapped it around me. The gesture was gentle, but it was urgent. I felt the immediate warmth, and something more, a warmth that came from him. He bent down. His eyes met mine. "Have you lost your mind?" he murmured, his voice deep, low, as if he did not know whether he was reprimanding or confessing. "It's just a little snow," I tried to answer, but my voice trembled more than my fingers. "You are freezing." He touched my hands, firmly, without hesitation, and then he pulled me toward himself, against the fury of something that not even winter would be able to contain. My eyes closed, and for the first time, I felt that he was not just looking at me. He saw me. Without words, he guided me back to the house. We passed through the side doors, entering the gallery without lighting any candles. The hall was dark, but there were still embers glowing in the fireplace. The orange light painted shadows on his face, on the moldings, on the rugs. It looked like a painting. He did not release my hand. He did not ask me if I wanted to stay. He knew I had already stayed. When I turned to thank him, his eyes were upon me. There was no coldness. There was no censure. There was something intense, which I dare not name. He approached, slowly, as he always did, as if his body wanted to apologize for wanting so much, and I trembled, but not from the cold. His hand stopped next to my face, and then it happened. The kiss did not ask permission. It did not beg. It was firm, inevitable, as if time had decided for us, with a fervor I had never known, with the feeling of one who spends a lifetime denying their own thirst, with the pain of one who finally surrenders. His kiss had warmth and urgency. Mine responded as if it had finally found what it had been searching for. My fingers instinctively sought the lapel of his coat. His gesture wrapped around me with delicacy, like someone embracing something too precious to be lost, as if I were an ancient vase that he cared for, but feared breaking. It was not a lover's kiss. It was a kiss of two exiles, two deserts that, for a moment, found an oasis. Time lost its measure as if seconds or millennia passed. The air between us seemed to vibrate with something old and intense, as if, in that kiss, we had awakened a feeling that lived dormant at the edge of reason. His breathing gradually calmed. His eyes, once cold as stone, now shone as if carrying an unexpected warmth, something too deep to be named, but that I felt reverberate inside me. He said nothing. He just looked at me, like someone saying goodbye to what they believe they cannot have, and at the same time, like someone finally allowing themselves to desire.
Elena. Her name escaped me without my planning it, as if it had been trapped in my throat for too long, waiting for the right moment to be whispered, with reverence and urgency. She looked at me, and in that gaze, there was no retreat. Before any reason could stop me, I took her in my arms, not with brutality, but with the contained strength of a man who could no longer pretend he did not want her. I did not apologize. I did not ask permission. My mouth settled upon hers as if it were the only possible path back to the world of the living. And she did not retreat. She unsurrendered. The second kiss was like emerging from the darkness, more intense, more desperate in its redeeming tenderness, as if, in the touch of our lips, I sought to rescue myself from everything that was broken in me and drag her with me. Her hands slowly moved up to the back of my neck, sliding through the strands of my hair. Her gesture sought closeness, as if she wanted to hold the moment before it escaped. And for an instant, just an instant, I ceased to be the Duke. I was just a man. When finally I pulled away, it was like waking up from a dream I still wished to keep. But her eyes remained there, steady, open, warmed by something that trembled in the air between us. For a brief moment, there was no winter, there was no loss, no grief, only her, only us, and everything we still did not know how to survive. But that night was not just a climax, it was a premonition, the beginning of the unexpected, of what would change our lives and forever. And in the silence that settled between us, I felt, for the first time, that Ravenshire itself held its breath, as if recognizing the proximity of a secret returning to claim its place. And I, despite the unforgettable taste of that kiss sculpted in my memory, understood that I had crossed a boundary from which I would not know how to return, because loving Elena could be the beginning of redemption, or the deepest fall this dukedom had ever witnessed. My romantics and our story is far from resting. If your breath caught at this kiss, if the silence of Ravenshire still echoes in your chest, then you are ready for what is approaching, because part 2 will not just speak of love, it will speak of choices that hurt, about fear, about what is lost, and what one fights not to lose. Do you wish for part 2? Then write Duke in the comments. The more comments there are, the faster Ravenshire Hall opens its doors again. And do not forget to like the video and help us by clicking the hype button so this story can reach even further. And tell me, which scene has left your heart most restless so far? Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you do not miss what is coming, because Elena's past is about to knock on the door. And the Duke, well, the Duke is about to discover the price of loving someone outside the bounds of his reach. The continuation arrives soon, and when it arrives, you will not be able to stop listening. But until then, do not be consumed by anticipation. As soon as it is ready, I will leave the link in the end cards and the pinned comment. I await you on the next page of this story, where no heart will emerge unscathed.